Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 Index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this afternoon, we have Ryan McCormack. He's the equity QQQ ETF strategist at Invesco to discuss Nasdaq-100 performance. Ryan, welcome back to Trade Talks. It's always great to have you with us. And weekly performance is fairly close between the Qs and the S&P 500. Year to date, however, tells a very different story.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jill. It's always great to be here for our Wednesday check-ins. So for the week, almost neck and neck. QQQ returned 1.57% versus the S&P up 1.7%. I think it's sort of the same story. Investors are sort of digesting optimism around potential vaccine news versus, still kind of questioning what's going on with cases in states like Florida and Texas and California, Arizona, the list goes on. So it's kind of, sort of looking at and balancing those two aspects of the market. And I think there's some anticipation as we start to see our first round of earnings releases, and we expect earnings season to kick off here and intensify over the next couple of weeks. But as you said, year to date, it's been a much different story. QQQ is up 22.94% versus the S&P, which is up 2 basis points. So you're looking at nearly 2,300 basis points of outperformance for the Qs.
Yeah, that's quite impressive. Let's drill down even further and see which sectors have outperformed for the week.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, this week it's sort of Qs overweights versus Qs under and no weights, right? So if you look at the overweights, technology, communication services, and consumer discretionary really drove the vast majority of performance, whereas you look at the underweights, in this case, it was a detractor. You look at a sector like financials, biggest mover in the S&P, up nearly 3.5%. QQQ has no exposure there, right? So in this particular instance, some of the underweights that Qs did not have exposure to because they had solid performance that detracted from Qs performance.
All right, and if we take a look at our last chart here, Moderna, which certainly has been a highlight this week, and again versus the Qs and the S&P 500.
Yeah, it has been. So second deletion and addition in a month for the Nasdaq-100 and soon to be Qs. CoStar Group was removed because of an ICB index reclassification, and Moderna is going to be the name that's replacing it. That's effective on Monday, July 20th. This follows United Airlines being removed and DocuSign being added in. But Moderna is a stock that you and I have talked about on a number of weekly segments because there's been a ton of optimism around their potential COVID-19 treatment and now potentially vaccine. You look at the year-to-date performance, up nearly 284% on the year, around that optimism. You can see the bulk of that performance took place in mid to late March. Again, as they were sort of identified as one of those companies that were working on a potential treatment, shows again QQQ and S&P performance there. This is an example of one of those innovative biotechnology companies that has significantly more performance than QQQ and broader S&P. News today, obviously positive around Moderna. So a good kickoff after the announcement, after they had some really positive test results for their vaccine in which all patients tested showed antibodies. So, again, this among a number of other companies that are working on potential COVID vaccines, an initial bump for today's market, but certainly something that investors will be keeping an eye on as we head into the next round of earnings season.
Our modern day industrials for sure. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me on Trade Talks.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.